This Jewish heritage trip took us to Morocco and Spain. It is interesting to note that Morocco is in the northwest corner of Africa, and Spain is in the southwest corner of Europe. Spain and Morocco are separated by the Strait of Gibraltar. Our group met in Casablanca. Then we went to Rabat, Marrakesh, Fez, and Tangier. Our group consisted of approximately 40 members of the University Synagogue, and of course our Rabbi Rockless. From Tangier, we took a ferry to Gibraltar, and then on to Spain. We went to Malaga, Granada, Cordoba, Seville, and Madrid.
Shalom, David in Florence. It was a pleasure having you on our trip from University Synagogue to Morocco and Spain. As you know, the purpose of this trip was to visit Jewish communities that have had long, glorious histories, but are now in their last days. In Morocco, we traveled to many cities, so wonderful sights, but the greatest memories we have are of the people we met who shared with us not just the histories of these communities, but also the way life is now. Of course, we realize that 50 years from now, there really won't be Jewish communities of any size in either Morocco or Spain. Morocco is a community that goes back thousands of years, since after the destruction of the Second Temple. Jews preceded both Berbers and Arabs in Morocco. They were the first to start civilizations there. And today, we just have a few thousand in Casablanca and then just several hundred in each of 5 or 6 other cities. In Spain, where half the Jewish world lived, 500,000 Jews lived in the Middle Ages, which was half the Jewish population at the time. Today, there are only about 6,500 Jews, some say 10 to 12,000 in the whole country. Pretty soon, the Jewish world will be living in Israel, North America, the former Soviet Union, France, England, Argentina, and Brazil, mostly in those countries, and other communities will be smaller. But we, as a synagogue, the 40 of us, wanted to see these glorious communities, to hear their histories, to meet their people, to give what help we could, to take their stories back, to take their pictures back, and then to send donations to them and books to them, to keep their communities alive as long as possible. We realize, however, that most of those who we saw will either leave the country or their children will leave. And when our children and grandchildren visit in a half century, these communities will really be no more. So this was a pilgrimage and a visit to offer help, and also a chance to hear the stories of our brothers and sisters. We began our tour in Casablanca, and then, which of course is the economic capital of Morocco, but quickly from there went to the political capital, Rabat. We had some days of leisure in Casablanca to see the Mela, the old city, and to see a bustling, powerful city. This is Rabat. This is the Moroccan palace in Rabat, and this is where the king actually lives, and it's quite modern as compared to ancient palaces. And he has guards, as you can see here. And we were able to walk up to the gate. I'm welcoming people in, but we weren't allowed to go in. It really is quite beautiful, and with a beautiful plaza in front. Now, these are the ruins of Chella. This is an ancient city. Today, birds have eaten the foliage, and this is a water carrier. These gentlemen walk around. I don't know if they sell much water, but in olden days they actually did sell water out of a flask. This is the tomb of Muhammad V, the father of King Hassan. Muhammad V refused to cooperate with the Nazis in turning over Jews to them, even though Morocco was under Nazi control. So he's considered a hero, as is Hassan, to the Jewish community. Now, everywhere the country looks quite Moroccan. Here we are at Shabbat dinner. This is after services, a remarkably wonderful service at the synagogue. We were welcomed in. We sat next to the Holy Ark, and were really treated royally there. So we came back to this social hall, this Jewish social hall, and had Shabbat dinner, a kosher Shabbat dinner, and we were joined by a few other people from the local community and some other travelers as well. Ah, this is the King Hassan Mosque. He tithed everybody in the country 10% to pay for this mosque. It's the size of 2 football fields. It's gleaming and bright, the second largest mosque in the Arab world, first being in Mecca. Chandeliers and pools, a beautiful building. And unlike most mosques, tourists are allowed to come in. Most mosques are private. You can even see water underground. There's a floor below where you see water running under. And this is on the Corniche, on the seaside of Casablanca. The King Hassan is very revered by his people, a little too much for our tastes in terms of they could never refer to him except as His Majesty, King Hassan. He really is a father figure to them. The problem is with succession, he hasn't really prepared anyone to take over. His son is a kind of a playboy type who water skis and goes to parties a lot. Here we are at Havdalah services in Marrakesh. We arrived, we checked in, and before we went out to party at Chez Ali Fantasia, we joined to say goodbye to Shabbat and to wish each other Shavua Tov. Here we are at Chez Ali Fantasia. This was a huge tent, and a little later on we saw a show of charging horsemen and all sorts of musicians and singers, and we have dancers here at dinner. The food in Morocco is unbelievable. In between courses of couscous, people in our group danced. I wonder who that guy is. She was first on my dance card, so danced away the night with her. And there's Len Kranzer. Watch these moves. Really amazing. Len will never live this down. Miriam, where are you? And here's the show outside with traditional dances and folklore.
Holy.
And in fact, we even saw a flying carpet here. when you watch a scene like this, you can almost imagine what it was like when the Israelites left Egypt. Here we are in one of the many souks, in one of the many markets. This one in Marrakesh is quite large.
That is the National Association for the Advancement of Ethiopian Women. I mean Moroccan women. Probably Ethiopian women.
Now here we are in a synagogue in Marrakesh. And you notice the seating is face to face, not in rows behind each other. Sephardic seating, people face each other. During this trip, if women or men want to begin to write Sephardic poetry, we'll read it in services. In many of the synagogues we stopped in, we had short services, just like we have at University Synagogue. Actually, we don't have short services at University Synagogue, but they were services in the style of University Synagogue. They were short in Morocco.
The Jewish cemetery in Morocco.
Here at the cemetery, you'll notice that the stones have no markers. This is a Muslim tradition that the Jews have taken over. Some stones do have markers, but the majority do not. Those who are very pious, tzaddikim, saint-like rabbis, saintly rabbis, have some markers or even shrines. They're even healers. Jews, Berbers, and Arabs, especially among those in the villages who are a bit more superstitious, have healers to whom they have traditionally gone. And interestingly enough, the Arabs and the Berbers also will sometimes pay homage to these Jewish healers. Well, guess where we are again? We're at another souk. We had lots of expressions about the souk. I actually am hesitant to mention one of them, but we had, shop till you drop, souk until you fill in the blank. So we went from souk to souk, buying all sorts of tchotchkes. We never lost anybody because in Morocco they never let you lose anybody. This is Jackie Kadosh. His family gave this synagogue to the community, which was really a wonderful act. And he's showing us the beautiful ark. You'll see on the wall the Rebbe's picture, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because the Lubavitchers, when everybody else left Morocco in the late 40s, early 50s, the Lubavitchers came in to help save Jewish life. So even though the synagogue is not Lubavitch, they do feel gratitude for Chabad, for Lubavitch.
Two-thirds in this area, the new section, and the other third in the old section. This way is Sephardic, but what Sephardic? Mostly in Israel, not here. But we have also one of the old synagogues, now it's closed, and we call that the synagogue of the Migurashim from Spain, and they have also like this, not like this, but like this.
What's incredible about Moroccan Jews is, like all Jews who have been exiled from Spain in 1492, they feel very connected to Spain, to Ladino. Ladino is Judeo-Spanish, the language, kind of a Spanish Yiddish. They feel very connected to Spain. As one person said, in 500 years, Spain was always in our heart and Spanish was always in our lips. So whether they went to Morocco or Turkey or Holland, they still felt connected to the Sephardic experience. Again, can you guess where we are? Once again, back at the souk. This is Elfina Square. And Elfina Square is like the food court of Marrakesh. Spice cellars,
Food court in Marrakesh.
a lot of different things to eat, and all sorts of games and tricks and displays. Here's a Berber versus an Arab. We were told that Berbers and Arabs get along well, but there must be some rivalry because people in the crowd were either betting on the Berber or betting on the Arab. Our guide was Berbers, so we bet on the Berber. And you can imagine us American style going, Berber, Berber, Berber. This is a cobra, I think, but definitely a snake. and some of us were foolish enough to put that snake around our necks. Just some locals trying to get a better view of the market. Once again, flying carpets, snake charmers, acrobats. These are just 3 people from our tour jumping on each other's shoulders. Ta-da! Actually, prefer the food court in Fashion Island for cleanliness, but as a spectacle, this was great. This was Mr. Safrani, a representative of the Marrakesh Jewish community, very dignified, an auto dealer. The people who don't leave Morocco, the Jews who don't leave Morocco, are either very rich or very poor. If they're poor, they stay and they're taken care of by the people who are sitting in front of you. If they're rich, it's just very difficult to leave. Their children go on to France, but they stay and have homes in France. This is Dr. Guigui. This was in Fez at Maimonides' house. Dr. Guigui was a physician. We met with him. Basically, people spoke to us in French, and our guide translated, or people in the group translated.
We're looking at overlooking the city of Fez from a rampart up on the hill.
1 million people live in the Medina, in the old city of Fez, in this old walled city. What was incredible was how much it looked like Jerusalem. When you look at this panoramic view, you realize if Israelis and Arabs could see how much their countries look alike, it might even help to facilitate a peace between them. But 1 million people in these old city walls. And what beautiful sight of olive trees and mountains.
And we're really excited. We're in the souk.
Here we are again in the souk in Fez. This is the most famous souk in Morocco and in the Middle East.
Bakery.
What we found out was if you buy something at the gate of the market, you pay, let's say, $10. You buy it a mile down, you pay $5. You buy it at the other end, you pay $1. Pays to wait. This is a tannery, 2,000 years old in effect, with lime pits. The worst thing any of us ever smelled in our lives, but quite fascinating. We were given something to smell, spices to smell on the way in. And from the tannery right to the carpet market, where they put on quite a show.
That's great. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Wake up. Satisfied everybody. We have 25 colleagues. They do speak English. They will.
So after the carpet store, and the carpets were flying there too, into people's hands, look at the little boy, he is the loom of his father in making carpets and other fabric. What's fascinating about the souk, it's not just a place to buy, but a place to see how these crafts are actually done, rather than an exhibit hall.
We're having lunch in the Fez souk, a 250-year-old palace. They claim to have made the meal just for us.
The food was fit for a king or a queen, and it was really needed. And these were hot days with wonderful food.
We are now entering a tile factory.
On my wheel.
We saw a piece of pottery that was being made here for a few dollars that had a label for Neiman Marcus. It was being shipped where it would sell for thousands. No child labor laws here, unfortunately.
To the museum in Fez, used to be a synagogue.
On the edge of the cemetery is a synagogue that has been abandoned. It was very spooky. You go in, and this is what was the sanctuary. And when you go into the classrooms and the kitchen, it's as if they left yesterday. The plates are there, the pots and pans, the school books. And you can see how the colors, how interestingly it's decorated, Sephardic, mystical style. But again, very sad that it's been completely abandoned. And basically we could buy whatever we wanted because the community there is no more. Every place we went that was a synagogue, we chanted. We wanted to bring Jewish life back to these walls. We wanted to connect with the spirituality, the holiness that was there.
The round top ones are supposed to be rich. The flat top ones are supposed to be poor.
We wanted to say, we have returned.
They're buried a meter and a half down, and they're covered in cement to preserve it.
These are
into Maimonides' house now.
These are called kissing balconies here. The walls are so thin in the street, people in the balconies could literally kiss. This is Maimonides' home, today an Arab home. The Jewish community is trying to buy it from the family, but quite frankly, they get such wonderful tips when groups or individuals like us come in, they're reluctant to sell their home.
This is the beach and harbor in Tangier.
This was our last stop in Morocco, in Tangiers. Beautiful beach, very European city as compared to the rest of Morocco.
This is the Malcolm Forbes house in Tangiers.
From the poor Arab home to 22 bedrooms in Malcolm Forbes' mansion. What a view.
In the Casbah in Tangiers.
So we're back again at the souk of Tangiers. One last day of Moroccan shopping. You see the Rock of Gibraltar in the distance? What's incredible about this is the center of the European medieval world. From the Rock of Gibraltar, you can see Africa, Europe, the Atlantic, and the Mediterranean all meet. This spot right here was the center of the medieval world. You can imagine the Jews being exiled from Spain to North Africa. You can imagine Columbus's ship on the very same day, on July 31st, 1492, sailing in this harbor. And the symbol of Gibraltar, and including the symbol of Spain, are two big columns of Hercules flanking the Straits of Gibraltar.
This is the harbor at Gibraltar.
Gibraltar was fascinating. It was British enclave in the middle of, right there on the edge of Spain. Interestingly enough, when airplanes come in, street traffic on the highway has to stop because the highway runs right through the airport. These are the Barbary apes. The Barbary apes jump right into the window of your bus, kiss the driver, take food, but don't get too close. You scare them. There's our cantor.
Robert, how nice.
The cantor and the rabbi. That's how people refer to this. There's the rabbi walking away.
So nice. You are so nice. Robert. Robert. Oh, how nice. Robert, give me a smile. Say cheese. Yeah, that's nice. Robert. Robert, that's a good boy.
When you feed Robert, he's happy. But a little later, we scared Robert a little bit, and he ran to Mama and Papa. Gibraltar also had these wonderful St. Michael's caves. We went inside where the Vienna Boys Choir had sung a few weeks before, a stalactite cave with natural acoustics, just incredible. And we found a synagogue and a mikveh that we visited, Three boys with yarmulkes riding by on bicycles, who we talked to, led us there. Now here we're in Malaga, in Marbella, on the beach, a resort we needed. We just needed one day to lie in the sun or walk a small Riviera-like town, and this provided us with that rest. This is a kind of a chic, Marbella is kind of a chic, Saint-Tropez kind of place on the Costa del Sol.
At the beach. Some of the beach area in Marbella. In Spain. There's also nude bathing here.
Many of us went topless as well. We didn't wear our yarmulkes.
We're so sorry you're leaving us tomorrow because we know they would like to stay. You know, we'd like them to stay. They've been terrific. You know, just wonderful people, lovely people who they are.
July 4th, Shabbos dinner. We're in Granada, singing American songs, obviously, Shabbos songs, Israeli dancing, Spanish troubadours serenading us. Phyllis and Barney Gilmore, who weren't able to go on the trip at the last minute, sent us a telegram, gave us a chance to regroup, to celebrate. And to realize the purpose of our trip. Believe me, the Spanish tango can't match this kind of dancing.
A view of the old town of Granada from the Alhambra.
The Alhambra was magnificent. The Generalife Gardens were among the most beautiful we had ever seen. Earlier in Morocco, we had seen the Majorelle Gardens owned by Yves Saint Laurent, which were quite dramatic. But here, a virtual building made of gardens with little rooms with tables and chairs surrounded by foliage. And at night, we saw the National Cuban Ballet performing in the Generalife Gardens.
At the Alhambra.
That's the part of the Generalife Gardens. 2 days before President Clinton was there for preparing for the NATO summit. One of the places we were in the Alhambra was the Hall of Ambassadors, the room where the edict against the Jews had been signed, where Isabel and Ferdinand had financed Columbus's tour to the New World, where Shimon Peres and Yasser Arafat sat a few years ago to plan peace, and where President Clinton was a few days earlier. So this palace was full of history. There was even a courtyard with a fountain with 12 lions of Judah.
Entrance to the Jewish quarter.
The fountains were given by the Jewish community. Here on the edge of the Jewish community, we had Shabbat morning services, connecting with our ancestors from 500 years ago. El Malei Rachamim, the prayer for mourners, the prayer we remember those who tragically were exiled and perished.
So as to reduce the damage done. Among them, I can at least try to discover how one attains to the third category. In other words, to peace.
The most sympathetic guide we had on the whole trip in Spain was Miguel, who heard Jewish songs as a child, perhaps had Jewish blood, but was very sensitive to the tragic issues of Inquisition and expulsion. Most of our guides treated it as a minor historic event, even sometimes seeing it as part of humor. Many of our guides said things like, what else could Isabella do? She wanted a unified kingdom. She wanted it to be all Catholic. The Muslims converted, the Jews wouldn't. What could she do but exile them? as if that made sense, as if that was humane. Well, off we went to Cordoba, and Cordoba, once again, was a beautiful hotel, but it was Judenrein, the city. We were looking for Jewish life, it wasn't there. Here we are at Havdalah. You remember the earlier one by the pool in Marrakesh, here once again by running water at the pool of our hotel. We're celebrating Havdalah, the ceremony that separates Shabbat in the week, that ushers in the week, bringing us together.
Pushing of Morocco to this sort of nice, luxurious pace of Spain, allowing us to wander on our own and not being told we have to be afraid and having half a day free. It's going to be a very different pace, and the tensions are going to decrease. So I'd like us to think of this as from this Havdalah to next Havdalah as our last week together, and to really work hard to build those relationships, also to get to know other people. We realized that it was from this country we were separated. This was where we were. This country in the golden age of Spain was like a 2-century-long Shabbat. And then we were separated from it, and we wandered. But you remember the story of the key we heard from Miguel this morning, that people locked their doors, they took their key with the expectation of returning, and some of these tourists come back 500 years later with that key. And even
This is the city of Yehuda Halevi, the great Jewish poet and philosopher, Moshe Ibn Ezra. It used to be a town of a vibrant Hudaria, of a Jewish neighborhood. All of this we remembered, all of this we searched for. And people were looking out their windows of the hotel and the apartment building adjacent. What were we doing? Who were we? And our message was, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people lives. As I mentioned earlier, the National Cuban Ballet, here at Tango. This was in the Generalife Gardens adjacent to the Alhambra. This is our last night in Granada. The next morning we would be off to Cordoba. Cultural performances in Spain all began late at night. Dinner was never served before 9. This began at 10 or 10:30, ended at 1:30. And times were never exact. When we asked the box office how long the show was, they said 2 hours, lasted 3. But c'est la vie. Here we are in Cordoba.
In the 4th or 5th century AD, Roman columns made of alabaster.
Spoke to her in Hebrew, which I heard her speak English as well. She has never been to the United States, but she learned all her English in high school. So it was very interesting to see these.
The tower of the Cordoba Mosque in the background.
The Plaza of Maimonides. The plaza and the statue were built. This is the statue of Maimonides, 12th century Jewish philosopher, greatest, most brilliant Jew of the Middle Ages, built after Franco died. Franco, it is said, had Jewish blood, Torquemada, the Grand Inquisitor, and Christopher Columbus as well. All were descended from crypto-Jews, from Jews who secretly had to practice Judaism. The choice, of course, was conversion, exile, or death. This is Jacobo Hassan in Seville. who spoke to us about his Jewish life. He was there's Ruti our cantor, Ruti Breyer, translating. He's a PhD in economics. There are only 25 Jewish families in Sevilla. And he has started a synagogue in an apartment building. And every day he puts on tefillin. He drives to Malaga, 200 kilometers for kosher food. And he is dedicated to keeping Jewish life alive, as he says, to witness the greatness of Jewish culture in Spain. And here we're singing Avraham Avinu, a Judeo-Spanish Ladino song.
También para terminar que hay muchas amas de casa, por ejemplo en Grecia, en Estambul, sobre todo en Salónica, que todavía hacen las recetas culinarias como hace 500 años.
There's still some women that ama de casa is women that don't work, that stay at home. I don't know if there's a word for that, that still cook with recipes from 500 years ago. Can we get those recipes?
This is called Tango for Tourists. Actually, it's not called that, but this is, one of the tourist spots. We tried to avoid a lot of tourist spots, but we did want to see traditional flamenco dancing. So we went to this hall for a couple hours and saw the variety of dancing. Olé! When someone here says, "Where is El Toro?" we know they don't mean at the bottom of the intersection of the 5 and 405. After a little sangria, you're ready to jump up on stage yourself and dance with the dancers. This is in Sevilla. This was built for the World's Fair. The bridge is called the Trojan Horse Bridge because of the little head on it, and they're building a bridge like that, or at least one of the proposals is to help repair the bridges of San Francisco damaged by the earthquake many years ago. This is from the Columbian Exposition in 1942. This plaza was built for the Columbian Exposition. And this is Pigeon Park, where you put a little bird seat on your head or your shoulder and the birds come around. This was the site of the Columbian Games, the kind of Olympic Games, in this plaza 50 years ago, 55 years ago exactly. This is now a civil administration building, quite beautiful. Sevilla was perhaps the most beautiful city we saw in Spain. Incredibly beautiful with its architecture, its plazas. Madrid, of course, and Barcelona are the centers of commerce and power, but Sevilla is certainly a city of great charm. Some more kissing balconies here in Sevilla. That is a tile on the wall, a memorial to Susanna, who was a Jewish woman who, by accident, betrayed her family to her non-Jewish lover, who reported the family to the authorities, and they were killed. They were crypto-Jews, and she killed herself as a penance. And in the Jewish community, they had that little plaque up you saw of Suzanne in memory to her.
Actually, we're like a little city inside the city, with the royal stables, administration offices.
The courtyard of the Alcazar in Seville.
This is the Alcazar, the great palace. Of course, like the Alhambra, the Alcazar all have Arabic names. And of course, think of our own Alcatraz, all of these forts, fort, palace, same word in Arabic. These forts and palaces that protected the people and protected the king from the people.
The Cathedral of Seville. Cathedral in Seville, third largest in the world.
The middle of the main name,
This is where Columbus is buried. This cathedral was completed in the 15th century. One of the ironies, of course, is realizing that the gold there probably came from us. It was probably taken from us. This is the synagogue. Jacques Laredo is the president of the Jewish community. This is in Madrid now. And here he is speaking to us.
What about the cherem? You know what is the cherem? It's a malediction sent by the rabbis when something bad happens to the people of Israel. They send a malediction or a special prayer. The Rav would be more entitled than me to talk about it. And they say, well, never again will we put our feet into this country. As a matter of fact, the decree of 1492 said, verbally, you will save your life if you leave within 4 months from 31st of March 1492. If you don't, you will be either converted or killed. And you will never be allowed to come again alive.
A panoramic view of Toledo.
Here we are walking through the streets of Toledo, and Toledo is based on the Hebrew word toldot, stories or generations, a very Jewish town. Before you saw the panoramic view, and here El Transito Synagogue. This is now a museum. We had a service here. We weren't allowed to sing. We sang the Baruch Hu, then were asked to stop, so we said the rest of the service. We spoke the rest of the service. It's beautifully reconstructed, but there's no Jewish life in Toledo anymore. Madrid was a beautiful city. One of the most memorable experiences we saw was tragically the Basque revolutionaries kidnapped a Spanish bureaucrat, a young man, and tortured him and killed him. They were using him as a pawn to get political prisoners out. And we saw 1 million Spaniards in the streets of Madrid protesting his capture. Well, here we are, our final Havdalah. This is lovely and sad at the same time. We're going to miss being together. We now look back on 3 Havdalah services, almost 3 weeks of touring. We realize the next morning we'll be off in different directions, traveling through Europe, going back to the States. More than 40 of us have been together for almost 3 weeks. We're saying goodbye to Shabbat, and we also know to each other until a reunion. And that reunion was several weeks later, where we were glad to see each other once again, knowing we're part of the same community. And of course, that's one of the great messages of a trip such as this one. We travel together as a synagogue and a community. We have experiences together. We bond to each other, and we come back knowing that we'll see each other and be part of building a community here in California again.